pageant queen.
Get it. Please get it.
What? No, oh god.
Giant spider on the
No,
wall.
good, no, oh no. Oh, get it. Someone, I don't want to move.
You might want to get up.
Where do I move? Do I move to the left? Do I go to the right? Do I...
Go to your left, I think. Yeah, come to me. Come to me. Oh my god, oh my god. That is huge as fuck. Oh my god.
Saw it in half.
Oh god.
Fuck, get it.
Oh, thanks, Jay. Oh, I killed that Black Dahlia style.
Jesus Christ, yeah, it's dead.
Thank you, Jay. Pint-sized potty.
Pint-sized potty. Pint-sized potty. This week, actual host Meg will be doing one of the stories, but before we get into that, since it is 2021, let's talk about some of our resolutions this year for things we'd like to accomplish. You know what? I'll lead. We got a Peloton last year, and it has made an excellent laundry holder and
Oh no.
Peloton exercise mat weight.
Yeah, I think we've used it collectively maybe 5 times.
That's not
I think
bad.
I've done 5 rides, and we got it mid-November. So I think my New Year's resolution is to skip the chips and Peloton more.
Skip the chips and
Wow.
Pelly.
Well, if you Peloton more,
You
don't
can
have
have
to
the
skip
chips.
Skip, chip, more, pel.
There you go.
Skip chip more pill.
That's a good
It's
one.
just
Why
the best way
use
to-
many word when little do trick?
When I president, they see.
They
see.
We saw a sign while we were down in Southport. It was a special, and it was 2 ham for 4.
We vacationed down in Southport, North Carolina, for people who are wondering where Southport was. And it's this little sleepy town where Nicholas Sparks' book, Safe Haven,
Where all
is.
the Nicholas Sparks books take
Yeah,
place.
This one specifically is in Southport. It's a very cute town, but they have hilarious signs. Like, one of the restaurants didn't have an extra Y, so they were actually closed on New Year's Dax.
And then they like taped over the other leg of the Y or the
That's
X to make it
awesome.
look
Yeah.
like it was just. We
It's
have
very cute. We love it down there.
our friends pointed out that we have a nasty habit of when we're riding with them. We literally, well, more me than Lil, but we both literally read every single billboard we see.
Oh, God.
And somehow we do it in like a Jewish bubby accent. We're like, oh, New Year's Dax, they're closed.
Oh,
My
look
God.
at that! 2
Some
ham for
matzo ball
4.
soup.
2 ham for 4.
So,
I feel like you guys would be a hoot to go on a road trip with.
It's either we're a hoot or the most
absolutely the most obnoxious
viled people. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
okay, I can see that
I
too.
guess my resolution would be to stop reading in a bubby voice. every billboard.
Why would that be your
We
resolution?
also
do
have
it
a tendency to read either in a bubby voice or a shift to a Boston accent.
Or a really thick Russian
Boston.
accent. If you hang out with us on a road trip, you will hear all 3, sometimes maybe in the same sentence.
I like it.
It's disgusting. Yeah, so my real ones, I had several. Number 1, I would like to actually run this year. I got really into it last year for like half a second. And
Short
so,
run.
Yeah, very short run. I was like, oh, that's enough for 2020.
It was like January.
Yeah, no, it was like, I think I got through maybe February, and I was going 5-6 times a week. And then COVID hit, and we just started eating bread.
Well, I started
bread.
making the bread, and then it started to
Yeah.
taste good.
Incidentally, that's how this friendship started, so you
With
can't
bread
complain
and
too
coffee.
much. Yeah.
So I'd like to do that.
So prison rules.
Yeah. All we need is the toilet wine.
I would like to be
Aw.
on my phone less.
That's a good
Good
one.
for you.
Yeah. So we'll move on. So run more and be on my phone less. I think those are pretty solid ones to start with.
They are. And, I don't feel like it's too difficult.
I don't know. Have you ever gone on a run?
I have.
Have you ever climbed on a Peloton and been like, you know what? Nah.
I have. So
it's the climb.
So I also have a Peloton, and my goal is to work out 6 days a week, all year
Oof.
long.
Mine was
Check
just
back
more
in
than
with us in like January
Whether-
or June.
Mine was just more than last year, which if I do it once every other month, I'll have attained that goal.
So my minimum is 20 minutes. That's my minimum is 20 minutes, 6 days a week, whether it's Peloton, going on a run, doing yoga, something, not yoga, because I actually am not a yoga person. I like Bikram yoga where it's like the hot yoga, but if it's like regular, I'm not into it.
I don't
Oh.
like being in a room that's hot. Like when
I
a
love it.
plane is hot, I just want to like strangle
I've
the baby
never
in
been
the
on
seat
a
next to me.
plane that's hot ever in my life.
That's because you've never been in a room that's hot except a sauna.
Yeah.
You're cold all the time.
I am cold all the time.
I'm cold all the time too. But I don't like hot rooms for that reason. I hate the sauna. I hate the steamer.
Oh, I love the sauna.
I can only
Not
sit in a
at all.
hot tub for maybe 2 minutes because I get overheated and it
Yeah,
just
Mhm.
so I have a pattern getting in and out of the hot tub. I'll get in the hot tub and I'll stay for a longer time. Then I'll get out and then I'll get in. That time will be shorter. And it just keeps getting shorter every
Until
time
you
I
don't
get
go
out.
back.
Until I get back in, I'm like, nope.
I like to shock my system and jump from there into the cold pool.
No.
Or
Oh,
in
yeah.
Japan, we
Pass.
went to what's known as an onsen, which is a traditional Japanese bathhouse. And in this bathhouse, I know it was very interesting. We would go and you strip naked. You're separated by genders,
Mhm.
and there are volcanic heated tubs or volcanic heated pools
Yeah.
of very hot water, and I'm talking like really, really hot.
Can you
That
give us
sounds
a
nice.
specific temperature?
I can't.
Oh, well.
Hotter than
Then
your
you're not
mother's
credible.
butt.
But then you can go into the room, and in Japan, these baths or these showers are seated showers.
Nice.
And so you sit on a little bucket that you're given, and that bucket is then used to also fill with cold water so that you can get hot water on you and then dump cold water. It was just a very unique
So
experience.
lots of exposed assholes sitting on those buckets.
Yes.
And they were naked.
They were.
Exposed buttholes.
Hey.
So that's my resolution. Not the exposed buttholes, but
Chocolate
working out
pockets.
more.
So more consistent.
And yes, being more consistent. And the other one is mostly for my husband. Like, he really wants me to stop swearing because we have a child now. So I guess I should probably.
So this podcast just got late.
Oh, no, not in here.
Yeah. Just like when
Just like in front of our child.
when we're holding
When-
the baby and we drop the remote from the pillow to the couch. There's
That's like my favorite word, though.
Isn't it a great
Yeah.
word?
in front of she who shall not be named.
right,
Yes.
exactly. Well, my resolution is to not get drunk.
All right, Meg. So it's your story time. What's up?
Wow. Wow. So my resolution is to not get drunk when editing. My,
What are you talking
we
Why
had
don't
a-
you explain
Yeah.
why that is your New Year's resolution, Steven?
So we, during the New Year's season,
Yeah,
I
don't-
was celebrating a little bit.
Don't
I
group
say
us
we.
in as we.
I say
This
we.
was
I
not
this,
a
mean,
was
we.
a, this was a you
This was a
situation.
you situation.
Yeah, I decided to burn the midnight oil a few too many times, and with the burning of the midnight oil, a little too much whiskey in the coffee. And as was pointed out by a pair of listeners from Colorado, Justin and Anna,
What up?
there were a few times where it was very obvious that old editor decided, I'm just going to leave some random garbage into the show where we are talking about making
please
edits.
cut
Yeah,
this.
Yeah.
I think there was a comment, hey, we're going to cut this. And
There
then I
definitely
didn't.
was.
There
There was
several.
also an instance, and it's very apparent where I say, let's listen in. And then you get 9 seconds of elevator music, and that's it.
Well, that was on purpose. That was the joke. But yeah, it was
Well, in fairness, typically I go through great effort to make sure I listen to the episode, and we were
Before
in
we
cute
publish.
little Southport, North Carolina, and could not commit, and
Coincidentally, probably
we were the
pretty
assholes
drunk.
in that
Yeah.
situation too.
You
we were
guys
part
were.
of that equation.
yeah, we
You
were
guys left me for a whole week with this dude.
It was
Wow.
awesome.
we normally have more checks and balances with this podcast than the US government.
We just failed.
So one,
Kind of like the
But-
stimulus check.
right?
Oh,
Ugh,
don't get
sheesh.
me started on Moscow, Mitch.
But but you know, it's efforts to make it better. So, fun little game. If you can find out whoever finds the most editing mistakes in episode 5 and reaches out to us via social media or our email, whoever finds the most and we can verify that, you will get a shout out on the next episode by name.
I'm gonna be like, I found 430.
Now, I'll probably cut you on accident, but we will give you a shout out, whether it's just in the basement or not.
It's the episode named Ambi Winking and Illegal Drinking, right?
That's it.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
the one.
That's the one.
We're trashing.
Coincidentally,
Megan and her
drinking.
Perfect title in retrospect for
Or-
what actually
Or as our emerging tagline goes, interesting.
Interesting.
I'm going to hashtag interesting every single thing.
Yeah, that's a
We
great
should.
idea. We should.
We should.
But with that, so we mentioned this is a pint-sized podcast. So the reason for this is as we get into this transition
Pint-sized
time.
Potty.
Pint-sized potty.
So as we get into this transition time of releasing more episodes on a consistent basis, we're moving to the weekly episode. We are planning on just for a couple of weeks because, as we've already mentioned, we are moving to Baltimore where we're going to have a new studio.
Voldemort.
We're going to have
Baltimore.
Baltimore.
Voldemort.
More bald. So we're going to have a dedicated studio in one of our townhouses, which we will be living 3 blocks away from each other, roughly.
But I want, like, when you say a dedicated studio in one of our townhouses, I want to make it very clear to our listeners.
It's not a closet.
It's not a closet, and it's not a basement. It is literally a 3rd floor dedicated loft to a studio.
Yeah, we're
It's gonna
pretty
be so
stoked.
cool.
Yeah.
With brick,
And
exposed
flags.
brick, and it's gonna be beautiful.
I know. It's gonna be.
We'll post pictures once we get it set up.
Yeah. It's gonna be a really neat opportunity because we're going into a place that we're going to live, and we're going to dedicate it to podcasting as we move in, so we can design the entire space around making a better quality podcast. It's going to be exciting.
We're going to have a mini fridge.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, yeah, we are.
Hell yeah, mini fridge.
I'm going to get one from Home Depot.
Think about the Red Bull.
Oh, so much Red Bull. So we will be releasing miniature episodes, which are going to be single story episodes, but not in the extended line of thinking like we did with John Bonet. But those are going to be released for the next couple of weeks. And then once we get done, we'll let you know, and we'll go back to our regularly scheduled every week. Now, as a heads up, there's a possibility release date may change. We will let you know, though. We'll make sure we give everybody enough heads up.
We've got to look at our data.
But one last piece of admin before we get started with the pint-sized pod of the day. We have a special episode coming up on January 15th. And this is an interview with a guy named Brandon from the channel Fun Uniform on Facebook. Now,
Check him out.
Yeah.
Pretty cool guy.
Go in, watch his videos. He is a pretty top-notch paranormal investigator from Maryland. And I don't want to give too much away, but we're going to have him on the show where we can dedicate an entire episode to speaking with an investigator who actually gets out there. As you know, we want to in some form or fashion in the future get into investigations here and there. But this is an opportunity where, if you're listening this week, send us in one question that you have always wanted to ask a paranormal investigator. We will pick the best one, or one that we didn't think of, or maybe a few. That. Yeah, we'll pick one or more, and we will put them into the episode and mention you by name.
Also, actually, and with that, if you do send us a question, let us know if you just want your first name used and where you're from, or if you want your whole name used. So, like,
or your, I don't know, Instagram.
Yeah, or your Instagram handle. Like, let us know.
We can do like a post on Instagram where you guys can comment on there, or just private message us on Instagram or Facebook.
All of the above. So it's a pretty
do all
exciting.
3.
Yeah. None of the below.
What?
What?
As above, so below.
What did you say?
All of the above and none of the below.
So Meg, what kind of spooks, haunts, and histories, mysteries are all in one do you have for us today?
Well, it's like a horrifying histories mystery.
I love this.
So
What is it?
It's one of my faves.
What is it?
It's the Black Dahlia.
The Black Dahlia.
The Red Dalai Lama.
So very similar to the Jean Bonnet thing. I don't know anything about the Black Dahlia.
You know
That's
what?
so
I don't
exciting.
know a ton. I know that there's theories. Like,
Oh, I got some theories.
I know I've read like one,
Yeah.
but
I
I don't know much about it.
I know that she's smiling.
So I
only from American Horror Story.
I saw like the movie when I was in high school,
Okay.
and my sister took me, and I was like, that was so creepy. She's like, that's a true story.
Is that the one with Natalie Portman?
No, it's with
That was Black Swan.
Black Swan.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
a good one.
I don't know,
too.
some-
And
it's
Mila
with, like-
Kunis.
I only saw a scene out of that.
Yeah, I rewatched the scene. It confused me.
wow. It's fine. It's the movie with Josh Hartnett, and then I learned that it was like a true story,
Yeah.
and I love like crime stuff. So the Black Dahlia,
Dahlia.
y'all, is a story about a woman named Elizabeth Short. So first, I'll get into a little bit of her background. She was born July 29th, 1924.
Okay.
So 12 years after the Titanic.
Sure.
Was it really?
1912, yeah.
1912.
1912.
You know that date off the top of
Are
your
you
head?
not? April.
I am a history major.
Oh, that's true.
April
14th.
14th, 1912.
You know that
I was
too?
going to say
Yeah.
April 12th, 1914. No, it's April 14th, 1912.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, now you know.
She's from Medford, Massachusetts.
Medfed.
Nice.
Medford. So in my research I was doing, it was like, she's a native of Boston. And I was like, when the fuck did she live in Boston? She was born in Boston. So that's where that came from.
Hence the word native.
Native. But like when she was 3, they moved.
Do you think she parked the car in Harvard Yard?
I hope so.
Lobster.
Are you not a
A knock.
knock?
She was the third of 5 daughters to her parents, Cleo, who is a dude named Cleo.
Sure.
Like Miss Cleo?
Like Miss Cleo, but Mr. Cleo, because it's a dude. And her mother, Phoebe May Short. In 1927 is when they moved to Medford. Medford. And then, so a little bit about her family. Elizabeth's father, Cleo, he built many golf courses until 1929 with the stock market crash. Lost all their savings, lost all their money and everything, and they became broke as fuck, you guys. So in 1930...
I heard broke as fuck you guys, not broke as fuck.
You guys. In 1930, her father, Cleo's car was found abandoned on Charlestown Bridge.
In Boston?
Yeah.
No way.
And it was assumed that the dad had committed suicide by... I like how my typos ended up on here. He committed suicidal on my typos.
Sure enough.
By jumping in the Charles River.
He committed suicide on your typos?
No, he committed suicidal.
He committed suicidal is what.
Oh, suicide by typos.
I was telling Stephen that I was like, my autocorrect is being really stupid.
Charlestown is fucked up though.
So yeah, they found his car abandoned there. It was assumed that he must have committed suicide.
What year was this? What year was it?
This was 1930. So this was like right after the stock market crashed and right after the family lost all their money.
So she was only 6 when her dad...
She was very little, yes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So Phoebe, the mother, had to move her 5 daughters into an apartment. She worked a lot of odd jobs, mostly as a bookkeeper to support her and her daughters.
They should have moved to the Hotel Monte V.
Sure.
Yeah.
Throwback.
Call back to the bad edited episode.
Yes.
Just before.
Would you stop highlighting your failures? Thanks.
Elizabeth had moved around a little bit. She actually had very bad asthma and bronchitis as a teenager, and she had to have lung surgery when she was 15. And the doctor suggested that she move to a more mild climate during the winters because we all can afford to do that.
Sure.
Right.
To not worsen her respiratory issues. So, her mom actually had some family friends in Miami, so she went to go spend her winters down there and then the summers up in Medford with her mother and sisters.
So she's literally what us New Englanders would call a snowbird.
Yeah, she's a snowbird.
Exactly she is.
Yeah.
She is. But even with all this, friends still described her as a lively person even with all these lung issues. She was a lot of fun, very beautiful. So around this time, when she was a sophomore, she dropped out of high school. Like I said, she was known as a pretty girl. People thought she looked and acted older than she was. And she loved old movies and where it allowed her to escape the dreariness of ordinary life.
But what's an old movie
in the 30s?
Loved movies. Did I say old movies?
Yeah.
Okay, to me, they're old movies. To her, they were just movies.
Have you seen the new picture? They don't have sounds just yet, but it's real exciting.
To her, they
It's
were
one
just
frame
movies.
a minute.
Just go into a Nickelodeon.
So in 1942, her mother received a letter from the dad, Cleo.
Dun dun dun.
Exactly.
Wait,
From the beyond.
10 years after he died?
Allegedly.
Yeah, 12. This would have been 12 years later.
Supposedly.
Holy cow. Interesting.
Mom Phoebe.
I
Interesting.
heard that. Don't do that again.
Supposedly?
No, I nixed that. She got a letter from Cleo. He was apologizing, revealing that he was alive and well in sunny California where he had started a new life.
So he jumped in the river, swam through the Panama Canal, and started over in California?
I guess so.
Yeah.
It's a long
Or
story.
he hitched a ride from his
I think
vehicle.
he hitched a ride because they never found his body. So he was apologizing and he was actually asking if he could return home to his wife and daughters. And she was like, no.
Not a.
No, I'd
Bye,
say
Felicia.
yes.
Imagine.
Thank you,
just-
next.
In my brain, I'm just picturing like a letter and then her response just being like, "Dear blah, no."
Yeah.
It's the equivalent of today's K.
Okay.
Text.
Yeah, she was like, hell no, bish. That was in 1942. And the last time Elizabeth had seen her dad was, like Jay said, when she was 6 years old. So in December of that same year when she was 18, she actually moved to Vallejo with her father.
Where?
Vallejo, California.
It's in your mother's butt.
It's up north.
In
It's
your
just
mother's
up-
butt.
In
It's
your
just,
mother's
it's just
butt.
up north.
Just up north.
Just up north. Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to leave it at that, Jay.
Yes, ma'am.
He was working at a naval shipyard in San Francisco area, and they had made this arrangement so that she would move out there and she was going to do some cooking and some cleaning, not have to pay rent, and it would kind of make his life easier. He wouldn't have to worry about housework. She could have a free place to live. Plus, she wanted to go to California. He sent her $800, which in 1942, like, I want $800 today.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, even
Well,
Congress is only giving us 600.
Right.
So
I was going to say,
Right.
it's like choking chickens trying to get more than 6.
So he gave her the money. She
What?
moved out to California.
I'm from Georgia.
Choking chickens to get more than 6.
you ever
He's
choked
a-
a chicken?
He's got a thing of hay
Oh.
coming out
Actually, you
of
know
his
what? I
mouth.
think
Sometimes
choking chickens
the
is also
Georgia
a
does come
euphemism.
out in him.
I think it's also a euphemism for masturbating. I don't know.
Yeah.
Continue.
I didn't want to know
What
that.
ham did you slap?
Not the one I just bought.
Oh, Lord. Okay, so Elizabeth Shore is in California with her dad in Vallejo. Did not go well. She was there for about a month.
Oh, wait, so to confirm, it was her actual dad.
This was her father, yes.
Oh, so he did survive.
He did, yes.
Oh, I missed
We,
that.
we weren't sure it was just some rando.
Yeah, like,
oh, yeah. Hey.
We're talking
No.
about a history's mystery. It could have been any number of people.
No, I'm saying he allegedly committed suicide, and then 12 years later, he wrote the
Oh.
mom. This was him, and she was like, no, bye, Felicia.
Today's equivalent of going out for a pack of smokes.
So
You guys
that's-
have really muddled this story
What
for our
ham
listeners.
Did you slap?
So she's out there in California with her dad, and she was not doing the cooking and the cleaning that she had promised to do. And dad just thought she was like out partying too much, and he didn't like her dating habits, thought she was lazy, and that just didn't end well. So she moved out and worked at the base exchange, and was living with some friends. It was Camp Cook. She got a lot of attention. A lot of people liked her again. I said she was a very pretty girl. She was named Camp Cutie of Camp Cook while working there.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
It's quite the title.
Camp
Camp
Cook Cutie.
cutie.
Right? It's hard to say. So I guess she just didn't really like her time there. She was really emotionally vulnerable. She wanted to find a husband. Like, she wanted that kind of fairy tale, not story tale, a
Storybook.
fairy tale, storybook fairy tale life.
There you go.
There I go.
Congratulations.
Thanks for the help,
And
guys.
we thought Camp Cook Cutie was hard to say.
In 1943, Elizabeth moved to San Diego, and she was hoping to get an acting career, but there are also no known credits for acting to her name. She was arrested that same year for underage drinking. Her and some friends had gone to a restaurant, and they got like way too rowdy. This all comes into play later. They got a little too rowdy, and they arrested her. The cops like felt pity on her, like she was the sweet young girl.
I'm
So
like, oh, this is the Camp Cook cutie.
this is the Camp Cook cutie. They shipped her back off to Medford to her mother,
Medford.
and she was like, nah, bish, I'm going to Florida,
Sure.
where she met Major Matthew Gordon. He was training for deployment into China. They were quite in love, and while he was gone, he actually wrote to her. He proposed. She said yes. They were looking forward to this. He was like recovering from an injury, but then he died in Japan on August 10th, less than a week before the surrender of Japan.
Bummer deal.
Sad face.
Oh,
So
what-
they
what
did
was the
not
date?
get married. August 10th, 1945?
Oh, so like literally the day before Nagasaki.
Sure.
He
I like history, but not as
Almost.
much as you, Jay,
Oh,
so
okay.
I don't have all these like dates into my head.
The 6th and the 9th, or the 2 days in 1945 of August that they dropped the bombs.
Okay, anyway, so he was training to go on deployment, and while he was gone, he'd gotten into a plane accident. He was recovering from the injury, and that's when he like proposed. She said yes. It was all happy. But then in 1945, he died in a plane crash on August 10th, which was just before the war ended.
Okay, so two plane accidents.
2 plane
That
accidents.
stinks,
It does
right?
stink.
what a dingus.
Like, he was going to be fine. They were going to get married, and then he got in a plane again and he died.
well, gadzooks.
Jumping forward to 1946, Elizabeth moved back to California. She was living with friends, including an Army Air Force Lieutenant Joseph Gordon Fickling. I can't say that.
Sure.
She had a thing for the
I
military,
was just
you
gonna say
guys.
she has a thing for military officers.
Because there was another relationship with a military guy. I just didn't include it because it wasn't important. So they began writing to each other. They would meet up and visit whenever they could. He had a place in Long Beach, and she spent some time there. So that was kind of what was happening. That was, 1946 in the summer. We're going to jump forward to December 8th, 1946. Elizabeth left Los Angeles to take a bus to San Diego. And before she left, she was very worried about something. She was staying with a friend, Mark Hansen. She stayed with a lot of men, which I feel like is very,
Promiscuous.
this
Especially
is
back
the
then.
40s. So Mark was quoted saying, "I didn't see her, but she was sitting there one night when I came home with Anne," who I guess was a friend. "This was around 5:30 or 6, sitting and crying, saying she had to get out of there. She was crying about being scared, one thing or another, but I don't know." So he kind of got part of a conversation she was talking about, but not the whole thing. And during this time, when she was in San Diego, she became friends with a girl named Dorothy. She was a counter girl at the Aztec Theater. It was an all-night theater. I don't know what that means. Is that like a strippy joint?
Back then, probably not.
Okay.
An all-night theater?
It was an all-night theater.
Come watch our
Strippy
shows
joint?
at 2 a.m.
I feel like if it was a strippy joint, it'd be called like the Gushy Clam or something.
Oh God.
Wow.
Or a coffee
I
shop like
feel
the
like-
Gushy Tamp?
I'm gonna say definitely would not be called the Gushy Clam. 100%.
No?
No.
You don't know that for a fact.
In the 40s?
The Mushy Clam?
I feel like it would have like a more elegant name in the 40s. So they met at the Aztec Theater. Elizabeth was sleeping in the seats and Dorothy found her and she like took pity on her.
So definitely not a strippy joint. Just that like,
Yeah, there's
like a movie
well,
theater.
I don't
there's
know.
seats, so we don't know.
She did like movies, so I don't know. So she like felt sorry for her. They actually became friends and she offered Elizabeth a place to stay with her and her family. She had they were telling stories and she told Dorothy she left Hollywood because it was so difficult finding acting jobs. There was a actor strike going on at the time. And while they were staying there, she only stayed for like a month. So like December to January.
That friendship evolved very quickly. Because she found her and then she was like, hey, you want to come with us?
Yeah, like it was very quick. Like she just met her. She's like, "Oh, I feel sorry for you. Like, let's be friends and come stay with me." I mean, I guess like the 40s is not as sketchy today. I wouldn't like just meet a stranger and be like, "Come stay with me and my family." But
I think they're equally as sketchy.
Are
Things
they?
are just promoted more.
maybe, I guess so. We have social media now. While she was staying with Dorothy, Elizabeth had met a man named Red, who was
Another man.
His name was Red, and that's how she referred to him to Dorothy. They saw each other off and on for a few weeks, but Red claimed that nothing happened between the two of them.
Sure.
Yes. So now we're in January. This is January 8th, 1947, and Red had agreed to give Elizabeth a ride back to Hollywood they were in San Diego at the time. He picked her up from Dorothy's house in a Studebaker coupe. I had to look this car up.
Studebakers are cool.
They're cool cars.
Yeah.
They are.
Yeah. So, like a very cool car. Dorothy definitely remembered it and drove her off to a hotel. He paid for her stay.
Oh.
Okay. So this was January 8th. They paid for her stay. They went to a party together, went back to that hotel that night. He says that she slept in a chair while he slept in the bed. So he's
Sure.
sticking to a story that nothing has happened between these two.
Right.
He had an appointment the next day. In the evening times, he went back to the hotel around noon to pick her up. And she was like, "No, I'm going home to Massachusetts, but I need to go meet my sister at this hotel in Hollywood." So he drove her to the hotel, but he didn't stay because he's like, "I got meetings." So he just left her in the lobby, said she was making phone calls. And he says that him and the lobby people were the last people to see her. But there is also a story that she was allegedly having cocktails at the Crown Grill Cocktail Lounge, which is a few blocks away. But some stories say maybe people mistook her for someone else.
So there's reports of her being in two different locations at the same time.
Well, there's reports of her being there for cocktails later that night. But some people were like, no, it was someone else. It just looked like Elizabeth Short. So as far as the Los Angeles police know, only her killer saw her on January 9th. She was missing for the next 6 days, and her body was found on January 15th. So the morning of January 15th, a woman named Betty was walking to the shoe store with her 3-year-old daughter, and they were walking through a neighborhood, and she saw something kind of weird, and she thought someone was laying in the grass. So she walks closer to go see it, and she said that it was so pale, she thought it was a mannequin, and she was like, "Who would leave a mannequin out just in the middle of this neighborhood?" Then taking a second glance, she realized that's a dead body. She grabbed her daughter and she ran.
I love how the first thought was in a neighborhood was it's a mannequin.
It's a mannequin.
Not my first thought.
So she quickly grabbed her daughter because she didn't want her kids seeing this, and she ran to the closest house. And from there, she called 911. And when the police showed up, they were freaked out. Like, this was not something you saw every day. This was like very horrifying, very spooky. They were all shocked to their core. They found I will add a disclaimer here. This gets pretty gory and nasty. So if you have a sensitive stomach,
then you shouldn't be listening
you
to
shouldn't
us
be
anyway.
listening.
It's not like you're looking at pictures. But if you are, that'd be dope.
All right. So when the LAPD arrived at the crime scene, like I said, they were just horrified. This was crazy. This was not a crime that happened a lot or anything near this horrifying. So it was pretty bad. They found the body of a naked woman who had been cut in half, like fully cut in half.
Like lengthwise or?
That's a very disturbing picture in another way, Jay.
I love it.
So like
So
across like
Across her belly.
Got it.
Yes.
I like lengthways better. Hot dog style.
Her body had been washed with gasoline, which I would never think of, but I guess that's what they did back then to
Washes all
wash
the
away
evidence.
any evidence.
Yep.
She had been washed clean by the killer and seemed to have been posed. She was on her back with her arms raised above her shoulders, her legs spread apart. Cuts and abrasions were all over her body, along her legs, her breasts. Her right breast was actually cut off. Her big toenail was freshly painted red, but no other toes. Her mouth had been sliced from ear to ear, which is known as a Glasgow smile, to look like a joker. They were about 3 inches on each side. She had a tic-tac-toe game on her right hip carved in. Crisscross cuts along her pubic region, cuts on her forehead. I mean, this was very bad, very brutal. I actually watched a YouTube, and she had a good point, and she was talking about this case. So I was trying to get some information, and she was like, "Who has time to play tic-tac-toe?" And I was like, "That's a good point."
More importantly, did she carve her own X or circle, whatever she was, like into her own body with her killer? Like, was she playing this game?
Like, was he playing alone, or did he have someone there with him, or was he just like,
And was she alive when it happened?
Exactly.
It's really disturbing.
So, like I said, she was cut in half. The lower body of her half was placed like about a foot away from the top half. So it was close together, but there was still a little bit of space. And her insides were tucked neatly back inside of her stomach.
That's disgusting.
Isn't that gross?
I knew some about this case.
I
but
did too.
Not.
I knew she was like cut in
That.
half and had the smile cut into her cheeks.
Yeah, I knew the torso bit,
Yeah.
and that's about it. That's disturbing.
Yeah, she also had marks on her wrists and ankles, suggesting she had been tied down. And it was like a clean cut. This was not like a sawed action here, people. Her body had been completely drained of blood, which was why she was so pale and why the woman thought she maybe could be a mannequin.
Was she drained of blood, or was it just that the murder was so brutal that she lost a lot of blood?
So what I've read from like reports and like what's in the autopsy, they say she was drained of blood, and it could be she just lost a ton of blood from being cut in half. But there was also no blood at the crime scene. There was no I think they found like a couple of droplets like on the sidewalk, but there was no blood at this crime scene. So she clearly was murdered somewhere else, lost all her blood, drained of blood somewhere else, and then transported to this neighborhood.
Yeah, because when you say drain, it kind of indicates that there was someone
like deliberately doing that.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas, just lost a lot of blood.
Yeah. They noticed she had been moved based on evidence of like the lack of blood. She was lying face up when they found her, but based on the lividity in her body, she died, or like when she died, she was actually face down because like you get all the markings and the bruising, and it was on her front, not her back. Medical examiners determined that she had been killed roughly 10 hours before she was found. So either the evening of January 14th up into the early hours of the 15th. So whoever did this, did a pretty quick job.
Why didn't they just check the street cameras?
Because it was 1947, Lil.
I was making a joke.
Were you?
Were you, though? You sounded serious.
Nobody gets me.
Just check all the rings.
I'm so misunderstood.
Check them all. Police quickly found out that this Jane Doe was Elizabeth Short from her fingerprints. They had taken those fingerprints back when she got...
The finger rings.
The finger rings. They had taken those fingerprints back when she got arrested for underage drinking. So because of that, without that happening, they probably wouldn't have figured out who she was.
Wow.
Got
Interesting.
it. That's why you said it came into play later.
It came into play later.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So this case was like just captured by the public. They were completely enamored. Elizabeth was a very beautiful girl. She was very young. This was a horrific way to go. This killer did everything imaginable.
I just Googled the crime scene photos. Those are graphic.
I have I actually have some crime scene photos here if we want to do some like show notes, and they're like, it's bad.
I'm looking.
So if you have a sensitive stomach, do not look at these photos, you guys.
I'm going to look at them for you.
So the reporters really sensationalized this case. It was in the paper like every day. And that's when Elizabeth Short got the nickname of the Black Dahlia. It's kind of like a play on the film The Blue Dahlia. It was because of her. I know, right? Isn't it bad?
Face. Oh gosh.
Yeah. Like I said,
really
guys,
rough.
don't look at it if you have a sensitive stomach. So yes, they gave her that nickname of the Black Dahlia because of her love of movies. Maybe that movie, The Blue Dahlia, her beautiful black hair. She always wore a flower in her hair, and she had black lacy underwear on at the time of her murder. And so the papers just kind of went with that, and they were saying things like,
how do they know that if she was found naked?
That may have been the only thing
that may have been the only thing she was wearing.
I mean, it looks like from some of the pictures she is covered.
Like she's covered. So
okay.
They called it like a sex fiend slang, saying she was adventurous and prowled Hollywood Boulevard, and she would be like out in tight skirts and sheer blouse, when in fact the outfit they were talking about was a tailored black suit. So don't read everything you guys hear in the media, or don't believe it all.
This picture. Oh my god! Did you see this one?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It's bad.
Yeah. Wowzers. So I think maybe the police covered her up after they found the body, perhaps?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Don't look it up.
Don't look, you guys. It's pretty bad. After they found out who she was, they actually contacted her dad, Cleo, because he was closer, and he was like, I don't give a rat's ass. I don't care. I haven't seen my daughter in years. I don't want to ID her body. And he wouldn't go with the police to ID her. So they had to call her mother in Massachusetts. And the way they actually like guaranteed that it was Elizabeth is they were asking questions about her, and they told her mom, Phoebe, that she had won a beauty contest in Los Angeles. So she was like very excited for her daughter and was answering all the questions to the police department. And then they were like, oh yeah, this is for sure your kid. We need you to fly out here because she's dead. And they like paid for her.
That's so fucked up.
It is.
I mean, I get it. But
like, yeah, like you can't just come out and say like, hey, your kid's dead. So they flew her out, they paid for her hotel, and she was the one who ended up IDing her daughter. And the police also kind of did it that way. Like they called her and said like, your kid won a beauty contest, because they wanted to keep the mom out of the papers and kind of protect her from that.
Mm-hmm.
Getting to some evidence, on January 23rd, one of the papers, the Herald Express, received a call from someone claiming to be the killer and that he's going to send her belongings to them. The very next day, they get a note, and it's made of magazine clippings. It's like this one, Lil, and I've posted this. You guys can look at it. So it's all...
We'll post it to Instagram.
Yeah, so we'll show you guys, but it was a note that was made out of magazine clippings saying, I will give up in Dahlia killing if I get 10 years. Don't try to find me. The day after that, the paper received another package with her belongings. It had her birth certificate, business cards, photos, her address book with pages ripped out.
No way.
Another address book that belonged to Mark Hansen. And that same day, her handbag and shoe were found on a dumpster near the crime scene. Everything had been cleaned off with gasoline, just like her body.
Interesting. So it's definitely the murderer.
Fingerprints had been taken, but they were compromised by the lab. And Mark Hansen actually was like, I guess he knew her, and he was like, yeah, that is her shoe. That is her handbag. I've seen her wear those. So fingerprints were taken, but they were compromised by the lab, so they could not get any prints off of any of the belongings or the letters. And they even got like more letters to arrive. One was like, go slow, man killer says Black Dahlia case. And the police were receiving calls like every day from people claiming to have been the Black Dahlia's killer.
It's so interesting that people take credit for
murders. That's a weird thing to take credit for. Like, if you hadn't committed a crime. And so the police were having a really hard time. Like, they were like, yes, like maybe we'll catch a break. But then like all these calls were coming in and they were like, never mind, this sucks. So they had some main suspects.
Okay.
First one is Red. I mentioned him earlier. His name is Robert Monley, and he was actually arrested on January 20th, 1947. He was a married salesman with a baby on the way, and he lived in South Beach. And he was the one who had seen Elizabeth the day before she went missing. They actually found him in a hotel not too far away. Like I said, he was a salesman, so he traveled a lot. And Dorothy, her friend, was actually the one who ID'd him and as the person who picked her up that night. So on January 17th, he had taken a business trip with a friend, Harry, to San Francisco. So the cops actually like found this guy, Robert. They found where Harry lived, and they went to go like stake out Harry's house to ask him some questions. When they get to Harry's house, they find Red's car, and it is in fact the car that he picked Elizabeth up in. And they waited for 2 days, and then Harry and Robert actually both returned on the 21st. But he was let go originally because of lack of evidence, and he had taken 2 polygraph tests and passed them both. So he's not their guy, but they like really thought they had him. This other one, I love this other one, you guys, is George Hodel, I think. Hodor. Yeah, George Hodel. He was a doctor to the stars, and friends actually recognized Elizabeth in the papers, and someone made an anonymous tip pointing at George.
Oh, I think I've seen some of these theories. It was the doctor.
Yes, so he was a doctor. He, I guess, had some pretty weird parties. Like, I don't know if they were like sex parties or what, but he was like very, very creepy. He actually, so this was 1950 when George Hodel was brought to their attention. So like I said, he was a creepy ass dude. In 1949, he was charged with raping his daughter, who was 14 at the time. There were like 3 witnesses to this.
Jesus.
Yeah, she ended up getting pregnant, and he performed an abortion on her.
Jesus.
But it did not go well, you guys, and she was still pregnant.
Oh no.
They
Oh my God.
placed the baby up for adoption, and he was later acquitted for this crime. So like they were like, whatever, nope.
Okay.
Like, even though there were 3 witnesses and she had a bad abortion and then gave birth to a child, they later gave up for adoption. So in 1950, when the police like had him with their attention, whatever, they put him under surveillance, and they said it was like pretty boring until one night in February 19th. A woman was last heard like around 7 p.m. in his house, and then she wasn't heard from again. Until 8:25, they heard a woman scream. 2 minutes later, they heard that a woman scream again, and the cops were like, what the fuck?
Wait a minute.
What the fuck? That we haven't heard a woman in this house for like an hour. And later on that night, Hodel was heard on the phone saying, realized there was nothing I could do. Put a pillow over her head and cover her with a blanket. Get a taxi. Expired 12:59. They thought there was something fishy. Anyway, now they may have figured it out. Killed her. So that's like a quote from the transcript.
You know, I don't know much about this case, but I have read about these theories.
Right.
And I've read about this doctor because his son is like, no, my dad was the guy that did it.
Oh, yeah.
And so 2 questions. Maybe you have the answers.
Okay.
Do you think, from my understanding, he was one of the only doctors in the area at the time who performed abortions.
Okay.
So do you think that this woman that they heard perhaps was there for an abortion? And number 2, the daughter that he impregnated, do you know if she had a boy or a girl? Because is that the son that's coming out being like, that's my dad?
So I've wondered if that is the son. I think with the timeline, this could be the son who later thinks his dad is the killer of the Black Dahlia.
Okay.
Got it.
Based on
grandpa,
based on someone
and
being
daddy.
born. Yeah. Daddy, grandpa.
Jesus.
Based on someone being born in 1950.
Got it. Okay, that tracks. Got it.
As far as the screams, I don't know if that was a woman hoping to get an abortion or not. this quote, I think, is about his secretary, and I'll get to that.
Okay.
So another quote that they heard him on the phone was saying, "Supposing I did kill the Black Dahlia. They couldn't prove it now. They can't talk to my secretary anymore because she's dead." His secretary had committed suicide or like an overdose.
Quote unquote.
Quote unquote. And later police found out that she was actually blackmailing this guy before he died. She had some information that he was like charging people wrong, like just doing some dirty stuff in his business, like being a doctor. And she was like, "You're not going to get away with this. You can't charge people or like insurance or whatever." The police just like left. Like they heard all this and they just left. There's also some theories that he was like paying off the police department.
That tracks.
Based on like other phone calls he had made. So like, did they have enough evidence to arrest him? I don't know. But they just left. And then his son, Steve Hodel, was a homicide detective for the LAPD. And he's the one, like Lily said, he thinks his dad is the Black Dahlia killer. He even like wrote like a book in the 80s, I believe, about this. And he thought like, so I guess after this time, like the Black Dahlia died, like he went off to the Philippines. He thinks his dad would go off to the Philippines possibly and like hide out from the U.S.
Philippines is typically where
where
Philippines, Thailand,
right?
Southeast Asia.
That's where
you
you
just
had
like going there.
Then he would come back to the U.S. and he would be like on a murdering spree. And like when he would come back to the U.S., he wouldn't tell anyone he was coming. He would just like come back. And then like
That's weird.
the son thinks his theory is like he would come back, he would kill some ladies, and then he would like go and like flee the country to get away so he wouldn't get caught. So his dad was the one who was like checking all this shit out. And in 2013, he decided like, I'm going to check my dad's soil for human remains.
Yeah.
And it came back positive. The problem is you can't test to be like, whose DNA is it? Like, because it's in the
DNA.
soil.
Yep.
There's human DNA in the soil. So they found that in 2013, but like good old George is dead and they don't have evidence that it was in fact the Black Dahlia or who it was. So that still like was cold. At one point I did include this drawing. North Carolina, a police department there, they got a drawing of a suspect murder who could be the Black Dahlia. And I'm going to scroll down real quick. It says Dahlia killer, lock this man up. So I'll show you guys and we'll post it. This is George Hodel.
Okay.
This is the drawing. That's Hodel. Or that's the drawing. That's Hodel.
Oh, yeah. It looks very similar.
Yeah. Looks, I mean, obviously not a fabulous, what are they called? Sketch artist.
Yeah.
The police used, like, that was not who drew this, but it was definitely, like, they look similar. Another theory that, like, ties George Hodel to this is there was a Cleveland, Ohio string of murders before Elizabeth's body was found, and victims were cut in half, and there were cuttings along the victim's body that were very similar to Elizabeth. And then the Cleveland killer apparently moved out west. So was this also the person who...
It's like Ted Bundy, but in reverse.
Like Ted Bundy, but in reverse. So like, was this person possibly the same guy? And was George the Cleveland killer? Like there's kind of no knowledge, I guess, as to if he was in Cleveland beforehand, but he did like to jump around and he was a doctor. So he had like medical knowledge of how to slice someone in half.
Yeah.
And also like the way she was sliced in half, I guess, was like a way that was taught in medical procedures.
Like very surgical. Yes.
It was a way that was taught in medical procedures around this time. Another theory. I like this one too. This one's just a little kooky.
Okay.
I don't think this person did it, but the fact that she came out and said she did it, I love kooky people. It's just fun. Her name is Christine Reynolds.
Fun.
They're fun. They make for good stories, you guys.
That's true.
So in November of 1950, Christine Reynolds called the Oakland Tribune to turn herself in and say that she was the Black Dahlia killer. At this time, she was the 27th person to confess to this crime. So the cops were like, whatever.
Sure, Jan.
Okay.
Yeah, sure, Jan. Have a nice day.
Yeah, just write your information down. We'll get back to you in a week.
Yeah, and she called and she was like, look, I've had a lot of affairs with some Hollywood stars. And they were like, good for you.
Hollywood star.
You know, good for you. Next. But then she went on to say that, like, Elizabeth was living with her at the time of the murder. And she also said that they had a love affair, which was very scandalous in the 50s.
Yeah, definitely.
Not so much today, but like in 1950, it was very scandalous. And the papers like ran with this and went on about how she was like scandalous and like a lesbian and like how dare she and blah, blah. She says that Elizabeth stayed out late.
What was her name? Christine
Reynolds.
Any relation to Ryan Reynolds?
Oh, God. Snail trails.
Snail trails. She said that the night that like she went missing, Elizabeth had stayed out late and she found Elizabeth at a bar. She said that they argued, and in the car ride home, she had choked Elizabeth. And then Elizabeth had like broken free. She ran out of the car. Christine had like a knife with her because we all just carry knives with us.
Of course.
And she just started to stab her. Like she was angry. She started to stab her. But she didn't remember this at the time of the murder. This was just coming to her now. And so they were really disregarding her. And she said she killed her and left her body there. And the police were like, all right, but there was like no blood there. There's no evidence that her body was left there. So we think that you're like lying. Where was the blood? But Christine had some information on this case that no one else had. She had said, quote, I cut her goddamn hair off and shoved it up her fucking pussy.
Oh, yikes.
So this did happen, but the police did not release this information. So only if you were the killer or worked in the police department did you know this.
Okay.
So police confront her and she very quickly broke down. She's not a badass murderer, you guys. She, at the time of the Black Dahlia murder, had a girlfriend who worked in the police department, and she got this info from her. Like little pillow talk, you guys. And I think, like, I don't know if she was just like angry with the police. She said that like 2 days before Elizabeth was found, she like woke up with bloody clothes and thought she killed someone. And she like went to the police department and she didn't really like get any attention. They didn't question her because like she went into the police department and then they found the Black Dahlia. And so they were really occupied with that. Still, I think it's weird they didn't talk to this woman who had bloody clothes and brought her bloody clothes in. And I also think it's very weird that they didn't go find this girlfriend and say like, hey, like you leaked this info 3 years earlier and maybe you shouldn't work here. My last theory is the theory of a police cover-up. And some people think that this is like truly what happened.
Oh, it is. Like it is.
Look at Jay. He's already got it.
This is the one.
This is the one.
So a woman named Agnes Underwood was working at the Herald Express and she was doing interviews for the case. So the police department and the newspapers were really working together to try to get evidence. So like the papers would interview people, they would help police, and then the police would get evidence, they would give it to the papers to write about. And so people were reading
like
the
the
stories.
Symbiotic relationship.
Yes. So Agnes was doing all these big interviews. She had interviewed Robert Monley, aka Red, and days later, he was taken off the case. She was taken off the case.
Agnes?
Agnes was.
Agnes, okay.
So days after her big interviews, she's taken off the case. A few days later, she was put back on the case.
Okay.
Almost immediately later, she was taken off the case, and they were like, "Nah, you're gonna have a desk job." Exactly, and they were
snip snap.
She was one of the first women to have a major editorial job at a major newspaper, so this was like, I mean, a big deal. The theory is that she got too close to solving this murder. So I don't know, like, what information she had and who she had it on.
But they had to take her off the case to kind of brush some of the evidence away or something.
Exactly. And why would they do that? So the papers and the police, like I told you, they had this deal where they were kind of helping each other. But the LAPD was known for being corrupt and may have been trying to hide the killer's identity. I don't know why. And in 1949, a grand jury found the LAPD to have corrupt officers operating with secrecy and jealousy. They had a complete shakeup in their department, and the police chief was even fired. And to this day, it has not been publicized if the LAPD knows who killed Elizabeth Short. So they've never, in all these years, fessed up and been like, yeah, we fucked up all those years ago.
So it's another one of those scenarios that it could be someone that's very prominent in the community.
Yeah.
And they're kind of playing a cover for them or providing them a shield.
Exactly.
So in the article that I read about, it was about the doctor
Yes.
and the son, who is like a police detective or something.
Yeah.
Now
He
he
was-
had a ton of evidence,
Mhm.
right? He was like, "Oh, it's my dad."
Which is why he went to the dad's house and like dug up the soil.
So, from what I read, though, he did do the soil, but he petitioned the owners of the house to allow them to dig
Deeper.
more, and the owners were like, "Nah, dog."
I
And-
would say yes.
Yeah, and I guess
would
he like
say
brought
yes.
it to the police, the police department, and the police department was like, "Nah, dog. It's so long ago. I think we should just let it go."
I think this is a big enough story that like they definitely should have done that.
Yeah, so maybe that kind of correlates because with the theory that the police department had an involvement in a cover up, because if it's so large now, why would they be like, "Nah, dog"?
Exactly. And this was 2013, so this was not that long ago. And like, I feel like everyone knows about this case.
Yeah.
Or they've at least heard about
Of
it
course.
in passing. And you know, George Hodel, he was a very prominent
Hodor.
person.
Hodor.
Hodor.
He was a very prominent person. Like, he was a huge doctor in the Hollywood
Mhm.
area. So, and you know, like, if you were like a Hollywood star or a big important person in Los Angeles, like, you went to him.
Right.
So that maybe could be a cover up and
Yeah. Ugh, why?
just all this
Ugh.
crazy stuff.
Wild.
Wild.
Don't like that.
Don't like that.
That's my history's mystery,
Don't
you
like
guys.
that.
That's
Well, I think the LAPD is still pretty corrupt.
Yeah. Did you know that the LAPD, like, they get their SAG cards because movies and television shows,
oh yeah, that
they'll
makes sense.
hire them because they already know like what to do as a police officer. So they'll have
Mhm.
like 5 actors, whatever. But when they do
Yeah.
like a SWAT, then LAPD, and they get paid way more to go sit on set and like
Sure,
be a
of course.
cop for a movie. So
Yeah.
yeah, like I totally
It
see. Maybe they
tracks.
could be corrupt.
I mean, even down to like the autopsy reports. Like, I was listening to Morbid. Big shout out, they're great. Morbid did an awesome episode on the Brittany Murphy,
Oh
death.
gosh.
and they were talking about how the autopsies were weird, and there was just a lot going on there. And LAPD just sounds kind of,
They just sound like they don't really
so much money there.
just in general.
They're just not doing a great job.
Maybe
Yeah.
not just the LAPD, but
Yeah, so you guys, I found some images. They're pretty nasty. So I just want to give that disclaimer before anyone goes on and looks them
yeah,
up.
they're gross.
They are pretty gross. This was a
It's a stupid thing.
this was a bad thing.
Yeah, that cut is stupid thick.
So
Well, with that, Meg has now given us a gory history's mystery
yeah, I
on our
have
first pint-sized potty.
pint-sized potty.
Pint-sized
Pint-sized
potty.
pod.
Check us out on
Potty.
Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, or shoot us over an email at andnowwe'rehaunted@gmail.com.
So with that, we've looked into the void.
And now we're
Interrupting
haunted.
Cal.
Aw.
Moo! And now we're haunted.
Peace out.